power games drenched in blood define the very essence of Westeros, a charming kingdom where the national sport is treachery and the seasons have the emotional stability of a hormonal teenager. You might think, oh, a fantasy world with knights and dragons, how quaint. Wrong. Incredibly, monumentally wrong. Every wedding is a potential bloodbath, every alliance is as trustworthy as a $3 bill, and the only thing more common than wine is a gruesome, inventive, and often deeply unsatisfying death. The great houses are basically just glorified street gangs with better PR, all squabbling over a spiky metal chair that seems to have a higher body count than most historical plagues. Forget good versus evil. In Westeros, the choice is usually between abhorrent and slightly less abhorrent, but give it time. And just for kicks, an army of ice zombies decides to mosey on down from the north to join the fun. The Walking Dead may feature hordes of shambling corpses, but let's be brutally honest, the zombies are just a smelly, meandering plot device. The real horror show is what's left of humanity. In this post-apocalyptic landscape, society has crumbled faster than a stale cracker, and the remaining survivors are a delightful smorgasbord of charismatic psychopaths, benevolent dictators, and folks who have just completely lost their marbles. You're far more likely to get an arrow in the back from a dude named Daryl, or a friendly greeting from a baseball bat named Lucille, than you are to be peacefully munched on by a walker. It's a world where trust is a forgotten luxury, and community usually means a heavily armed compound run by someone with a severe messiah complex. The zombies are the catalyst. The main event is a relentless, depressing exploration of how quickly we'd all devolve into savage, paranoid monsters if the Wi-Fi ever permanently went out. Warhammer 40,000 makes other dark universes look like a delightful romp through a field of daisies. The tagline is literally, in the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. And they are not, under any circumstances, exaggerating. The supposed good guys, the Imperium of Man, are a fanatical, xenophobic, galaxy-spanning empire that worships the 1,000-year-old corpse of their emperor and considers lobotomizing people into mindless cyborg servitors a perfectly reasonable form of punishment. And they are the heroes of the setting. Everyone else is either a horde of giant sentient fungi with a penchant for violence, sadistic space elves who subsist on torture, or literal demons from a hell dimension. Every planet is a potential charnel house, every alien race wants to wear your skull as a hood ornament, and the entire galaxy is perpetually on the brink of being devoured by intergalactic locusts. The bleakness is so absolute, it circles back to being absurdly awesome. Black Mirror isn't so much a single universe as it is a funhouse mirror held up to our own society, a mirror that's cracked, distorted, and probably live streaming your existential crisis for public consumption. This isn't your grandfather's science fiction. There are no warp drives or benevolent aliens here. Instead, you get a world with social media credit scores that dictate your every move. Digital clones of human consciousness trapped in eternal torment for customer service purposes, and robotic bees that, well, you can probably guess how that turns out. Each episode is a self-contained technological nightmare, a what-if scenario that begins with a shiny new gadget and inevitably ends with someone's life in utter ruins, and the audience questioning their slavish devotion to their smartphone. The horror in Black Mirror isn't a monster lurking in the shadows. It's us, with slightly better Wi-Fi and a complete lack of foresight. The road is what you get when you strip mine every last ounce of hope from the world and then set the remains on fire. And I mean everything is gone. A mysterious cataclysm has blotted out the sun, the planet is covered in a thick layer of gray ash, and the world is a cold, silent tomb. There are no zombies, no aliens, just the skeletal remains of civilization and a few desperate, starving survivors who have largely resorted to cannibalism. A father and his young son journey through this desolate wasteland, pushing a shopping cart containing their meager possessions, and their story is a masterclass in unrelenting, soul-crushing misery. Every encounter with another human is a life-or-death gamble, and the central question is whether it's better to keep struggling in a world with no future or to just stop. It's so bleak it makes you want to hug a tree, except all the trees are dead. The Lovecraftian mythos is built on the wonderfully comforting idea that not only is humanity a cosmic accident, but the universe is governed by a pantheon of blind, idiot gods and tentacled abominations from beyond space-time who could accidentally erase our existence without even noticing. H.P. Lovecraft, a man who was likely afraid of his own reflection, channeled all of his existential dread into these tales. The horror here isn't a man with a knife. It's the soul-shattering, sanity-blasting realization that you are a tiny, meaningless speck in a cold, uncaring cosmos. Delving into the lore of the great old ones and outer gods is like earning a doctorate in things man was not meant to know. In this universe, madness isn't so much a risk as it is the inevitable consequence of peeking behind reality's curtain. So if you ever stumble upon a book bound in human skin, maybe just leave it on the shelf. Cyberpunk 2077's Night City is a dazzling, neon-drenched metropolis where the future is now, and it's a glorious chrome-plated dumpster fire. Sure, you can swap out your boring flesh and bone arms for shiny new robotic ones with a built-in monowire, but you'll probably have to sell a kidney on the black market to afford the cyberware. Megacorporations have more power than governments, personal privacy is a quaint historical notion, and the chasm between the ultra-rich and the dirt poor is wider than the Grand Canyon. Your life is cheap, your dreams are probably the intellectual property of the Arasaka Corporation, and the only path to success is to be faster, tougher, and more willing to screw over the other guy than anyone else. It's a world that poses the profound philosophical question, what does it mean to be human? And promptly answers it with, who cares? Check out these cool glowing tattoos. 1984 is the quintessential dystopian nightmare, the ominous blueprint for every "the government is watching you" story ever conceived. In the super creatively named superstate of Oceania, the party led by the perpetually mustachioed face of Big Brother is always watching. And they're not just monitoring your actions, they're scrutinizing your very thoughts. Thought crime is the most heinous offense, and the ever-vigilant thought police are there to ensure you're not having any naughty, unapproved ideas about freedom or individuality. History is in a constant state of flux, language is being systematically shrunk to eliminate rebellious concepts, and the entire populace is kept in a state of perpetual war and abject fear. It's a world where 2 + 2 = 5 if the party decrees it, and you'll believe it, or you'll be vaporized into non-existence. It is the ultimate exploration of psychological totalitarianism. Berserk is what you would get if you tossed a medieval fantasy into a blender with a treatise on nihilism, a gallon of blood, and the entire nightmarish portfolio of Hieronymus Bosch. This is not your grandfather's tale of knights and dragons. The world of Berserk is a brutal, unforgiving hellscape where mercenaries slaughter each other for scraps of coin, monstrous demons known as apostles prey on humanity with sadistic glee, and the line between good and evil has been utterly and completely obliterated. Our hero, Guts, is a man who has endured so much trauma it's a genuine miracle he can still stand, let alone swing a sword the size of a small car. He's on a singular quest for revenge against his former best friend, who, in a classic overreaction, sacrificed all his comrades to be reborn as a demon god. It's a relentless, graphic, and soul-crushing tale. Children of Men offers a uniquely terrifying apocalypse. There are no zombies, no nuclear fallout, just a quiet, creeping, all-encompassing despair. For some unknown reason, humanity has become completely infertile. No more babies have been born for 18 years. The youngest person on Earth has just died, and with them the very last glimmer of hope for the future of the human race. The world hasn't so much collapsed as it has just given up. The United Kingdom is one of the last ostensibly functioning societies, and it's a grim, militarized state that hunts down and cages refugees in squalid camps. It is a world suffocating under the weight of its own hopelessness, a slow, agonizing slide into global extinction. The horror isn't in a sudden, violent cataclysm. It's in the deafening silence of empty playgrounds and the slow, inevitable decay of a species that knows it has no future. The Dark Tower is Stephen King's sprawling, multi-genre magnum opus, an epic that weaves together many of his other works into one vast, beautiful, and utterly depressing multiverse. Mid-world, the primary setting, is a dying land that has moved on. Time and space are unraveling at the seams. The sun sometimes rises in the north and sets in the east, and what's left of civilization is a hollow, decaying echo of what it once was. It's a bizarre, magnificent fusion of a gunslinging western, a high fantasy quest, and a post-apocalyptic nightmare, where cowboys wield revolvers forged from the steel of Excalibur and fight ancient robotic bears. At the center of this decaying reality stands the titular Dark Tower, the linchpin of all existence, and it's under siege by the chaotic forces of the Crimson King. It's a story about fate, obsession, and the heartbreakingly cyclical nature of good and evil. The Witcher presents a morally gray world that feels refreshingly and depressingly realistic for a high fantasy setting. The true monsters aren't just the ghouls and griffins that go bump in the night. They're the kings who wage devastating wars for their own selfish ambitions, the priests who incite pogroms against non-humans, and the ordinary, fearful villagers who are just a little too quick to grab their pitchforks and torches. Geralt of Rivia, our monster-slaying protagonist, is a chemically altered mutant who is often far more human than the normal people who hire and revile him. He's perpetually forced to choose between the lesser of two evils, only to discover that both choices inevitably lead to someone getting royally screwed over. It's a cynical, weary world, but one that still allows for glimmers of hope and heroism, usually right before they get unceremoniously stomped out. Attack on Titan kicks off with a simple, terrifyingly effective premise. What's left of humanity huddles in fear behind a series of concentric 50-meter-high walls to protect themselves from giant, man-eating humanoids called Titans. For a century, they have known a fragile, ignorant peace. Then the colossal Titan, a monster taller than the walls themselves, appears and kicks a hole in their defenses, and all hell breaks loose. The early parts of the story are a desperate, brutal, and bloody struggle for survival against an incomprehensible, seemingly mindless foe. But then the true horror begins to reveal itself. The real enemy isn't just the horde of giants outside the walls, it's the web of lies, conspiracies, and forgotten history that has propped up their society for generations. The truth of their world is a revelation so dark and twisted that it becomes a story about the inescapable generational cycles of violence, hatred, and oppression.